Hi, folks. So today we're going to be talking about energy and matter in the ecosystem. Let's start with the closed terrarium question. Many terrariums are closed, self-sustaining systems. The organisms in these terrariums are able to produce all of the materials needed for survival. Earth is also a closed system. Very little matter is added to or lost from that Earth system. So how do plants and animals grow if we don't add any matter to this system? Well, sunlight is the only thing that enters the bottle. So just like on Earth, sunlight provides the energy for the plants to grow, and the plants give food and oxygen for the animals to grow. And then when the animals die, there are decomposers that break down their bodies to provide the inorganic molecules, things like, carbon and oxygen and hydrogen, to plants so they can grow. Now, we're going to draw arrows here to show how light energy, chemical energy, and heat are transferred in terms of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So I want you to draw an arrow from one object to another, showing the direction of energy, like where it's going, when you're looking at photosynthesis and when you're looking at cellular respiration. So you should have some sunlight energy coming from the outside of the tank coming in, going to the plants, okay, because that's photosynthesis. And then we have energy from the plants going to the animals. The plants are also releasing chemical energy out here, and so are the earthworms, okay, all of that's coming off. The energy here also is coming out, and then we have energy going from the plants to the earthworm, because the earthworm is getting energy from the plants, okay? So we're going to watch this little video right here. I want you to move the boxes to show the order in which energy passes through this system. And you want it, obviously, to be correct. So starting off at the top, what is the first organism to get energy? Then what's the next? And the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that, all the way up until the top predator in this ecosystem. And this, by the way, is a video of a kingfisher eating a fish, or getting a fish. Okay, so the correct order of these events are sunlight, then aquatic plants, then aquatic invertebrates, then fish, then the kingfisher. So we start with the sun. It gives energy for the plants. Then the plants give energy for the insects or the invertebrates that eat the plants. Then we have the fish that eat the insects. And then we have the kingfisher, the bird, that eats the fish. Sorry, skip. Okay. So the world, or the biosphere, is made up of biotic and abiotic things. We've talked about this before. Everything is interconnected. If a chemical spill occurred in a lake that the kingfisher depended on as a source of food, the plants would die from the chemicals. And then the insects would die because there's no plants to eat, and the fish would die without the insects to eat, and the kingfisher would die without the fish. So if we affect one thing, we can affect everything. Now, food chains are a way to model the complex feeding relationships of an ecosystem, how energy transfers from one organism to another. This is a single chain in an ecosystem versus the multiple food chains in a food web that we'll look at in the future. So here we go straight from the grass, or the grains, which are the producers or the plants, that go to the herbivores, like the rabbits that eat the plants, and then to the carnivore that eats the rabbit. So I want you to take a moment and try to identify or write a description of each type of consumer. So these are all things that eat other things, okay? Using the picture, can you write a description of the type of food that they eat, or what kinds of different foods they eat? So herbivores only eat plants. Carnivores only eat animals. An omnivore eats both plants and animals. And a detritivore eats dead organic matter, or detritus. Now, there are different trophic levels, which are the levels of nutrient in a food chain. Trophic levels. The first level is the producers. Okay, they make their own food, the plants. The second level are the primary consumers. They're usually the herbivores, so they eat only plants. The third level are the secondary consumers. They're usually the carnivores or the omnivores. They usually eat plants and animals. And then the fourth level are the tertiary consumers. Usually these are the carnivores or omnivores. It depends on the kind of animal we're talking about. Like if we're talking about a bear, they might be the tertiary consumer. If we're talking about a pig, they might be a secondary consumer. Depends on the organism. The energy flows from the bottom level to the top. So sunlight is at the very bottom and it gives energy to the producers. And then it moves all the way up to the top consumers. Now, a lot of this energy gets lost as heat to the environment at each level because all of us need to burn energy to burn like the sunlight energy, burn our food to make energy and survive. And part of that is the heat that our body produces and gets lost to the environment. So the remaining energy that we are not burning off gets used for growth and cellular respiration. Only about 10% approximately flows to the next level. Eventually, once we get to the top level, there isn't enough energy left to support another level, and therefore that's why it has to stop. So that's why food chains don't go on forever. They stop around 3 levels, 4 levels, because there's just not enough energy to support anything else. So looking at this population, how does the population size change at each level? What do we see kind of happening as we go from producers to tertiary consumers? So if you look at it, we can see that as the trophic level goes up, the population goes down because we go from 6 million producers to 4 tertiary consumers. It keeps decreasing as we move up a level. So what about this? Why do you think there's such a big decrease in tertiary consumers? Why do we only have 4 when we start out with 6 million producers? And what would happen if we added a 4th level to this ecosystem? So because we only have 0.1% of energy coming to the tertiary consumer level, right? If we start off with 100%, we're going pretty much down to 0.1%. There isn't enough energy to sustain more than a few organisms at the tertiary level. So that's why we have so few organisms there, because we just can't handle that many. Now, if we tried to add a 4th level, there wouldn't be enough energy for that organism and they would die because they wouldn't be able to get enough food by only eating 4 tertiary consumers. Multiple food chains interacting in an ecosystem creates what we call a food web. So this is a lot of different food chains all interacting with each other. Organisms can be in multiple food chains in a food web. Okay, so they can be connected to a bunch of different chains within that one web. It represents the flow of energy within and sometimes beyond the ecosystem. The stability of this food web all depends on the producers, the bottom of this food web. If the bottom collapses, everything else collapses. Okay? So you can notice here that the rabbit, for example, is connected to like at least 2 producers, and then it goes off and it gives energy to 2 carnivores here. We've got the grasshopper that like feeds on 3 different plants, but only feeds the bacteria and the lizard. We've got here this plant, it feeds the rabbit and the grasshopper, but doesn't feed like a kangaroo rat, for example. You don't see an arrow going towards it. So the arrow shows the direction that the energy is going. Now, how would this food web be affected if all the krill were removed from the ecosystem? So if we took out the krill, which are right here, what would happen to the ecosystem? And if we decided to take out the phytoplankton, which are right here, what would happen if we removed the phytoplankton? Take a moment, try to answer that question. So if we remove the krill, we would make a lot of organisms starve. Like the sea turtle relies on the krill for food, and that's the only thing it eats. We've got the jellyfish, the gull right here. Let's see, the anchovies eat the krill as well. Okay, so if we, for example, like destroy the krill, the anchovies wouldn't have food, and the sea turtle wouldn't have food at all because like there's no anchovies, there's no turtles, you know. So if we look at, though, removing the phytoplankton is the basis of the entire food web because the phytoplankton feed the clams, they feed the coral, they feed the fish, the shrimp, the jellyfish, the krill. Okay, the krill and the clams feed the octopus. The shrimp feed the squid. The jellyfish feeds jellyfish end. The anchovy and the krill feed the sea turtle. So anyway, you get the point. Like without the phytoplankton, everything else collapses. because we cannot feed any other organism. Okay? Now, most ecosystems get their energy from the sun. The producers use sunlight to make food. Herbivores eat the producers, they burn some energy. In the process, carnivores eat the herbivores, they burn some energy as heat. Now, as each level gets less energy from the food than the level before, the food they eat is used to power movement and maintenance of the organism. Some of the energy goes to new biomass, so it goes to like their muscles and their bones and the rest of their body parts, and it allows organisms to grow. Right? That's how we grow taller when we're kids. That's how we get bigger and move to our adult size. Now, some energy is let out as heat or waste. So we lose a lot of energy from that because we have to maintain our body. Now, although the energy comes in different forms, everything is conserved. That means that we are not losing more things than we need to lose. So I want you to take a moment and try to label the trophic levels here. So what we want to do is at the bottom, we want to put the group that has the most number of organisms, okay? And then we want to kind of move up the level until we get to the group that probably has the smallest number of organisms. So there's a few things you're going to do on this. You're first going to fill in the blank right here with the names of the organisms that are in the pictures right here. You're then going to draw an arrow that shows the direction of the energy. Is it moving up, bottom to top to bottom, side to side? How's the energy moving? And then you're going to write a text box. There's a text box on the right. You're going to fill in text boxes to indicate how much energy is available at each trophic level. So you should have the grass, then the rabbit, then the snake, then the hawk, because that's the order that we have here. We start off at 100% of energy from the grass. We get to 10% for the rabbit, 1% for the snake, 0.1% for the hawk. Because remember, we lose 90% of energy for every step. So we only take 10% to the next level. And the energy starts at the bottom and goes to the top. So energy can be measured using calories, CAL, or kilocalories, or the big calories that we're familiar with on the food labels, and joules. These are all different units of measurement, so you can pick which one. Today we're going to use joules. So a caterpillar consumes 1,000 joules of energy from the plant it eats, but it cannot digest plant matter, so they lose about 500 joules in bodily waste. Okay, 320 joules of energy is converted to heat or used for digestion. So what percentage of energy remains for the caterpillar to use as growth, for growth? So first we want to figure out how much energy they have left to use. So we start with 1,000 joules, we lose 500 joules from waste, and 320 joules is used for heat or digestion. So once we subtract those, we get 180 joules. And then we take 180 joules and we divide by 1,000 joules, which gives us, and times that by 100% to get us 18%. So we just convert it into a percent. And so that tells us that out of the 1,000 joules that they had, 180 was used for growth, for building their bodies and getting bigger and stuff like that, which is about 18% of what they eat. So I want you to try solving these problems using the prompt. A chipmunk consumes 1,000 joules of energy from food, excretes 177 joules as waste, and converts 784 joules to heat via metabolism. How many joules of energy are they able to convert into new biomass, and what percent of the total energy was available for the new growth? Go ahead and pause the video and answer the questions. So we had 39 joules that were able to convert into new biomass and 39% available for growth. Pyramid models show the productivity or the percent of energy entering the system that's incorporated into biomass. So we have energy, biomass, and number of organisms. These are the different models that we can use. And you can see examples of the pictures below. Now, trophic efficiency trophic efficiency is the percent of energy transferred from one trophic level to the next. Typically, organisms are not very efficient, so we don't really transfer a whole lot of energy. An energy pyramid models the transfer of energy from producers to consumers. Because most of the energy is lost as heat, the more levels there are, the more energy is lost. The producers use more energy than is used by the consumers they support. Okay? So I want you to calculate using this idealized model of moving 10% of energy to the next level. If we started out with 5,000 joules down here, how many joules would be at the top? And you should put 5 joules, because if we start off with 10,000, we get to 10. Then if we start off with 5,000, we'll get to 5. So an ideal pyramid is based on the average efficiency, which is about 10%, moving 10% of energy to the next level. But in reality, that efficiency can actually be between 5 to 20%. Producers convert only 1% of the available energy from sunlight into food. Not all sunlight hits the leaves of plants, not all wavelengths are absorbed, and photosynthesis is expensive, and so it costs a lot of energy. So producers are not really getting everything we get from the sun, they're only getting 1% of the energy they get from the sun. Consumers also don't absorb all of the energy from our food. Some things are not digestible for an organism, like how much energy is used depends on the organism. Warm-blooded animals use 98% of their energy for food. Biomass pyramids just compare the different biomass at different trophic levels. This is how much mass, so how much material, matter, how much we weigh without gravity involved, is needed to support the primary consumers. Biomass is basically the combination of living organisms and dead organic matter. The amount of biomass decreases as you move up, so the percent of biomass transferred depends on the type of organisms present in that level and their level of consumption. So like a deer might eat more grass than prairie dogs, so that might be a result of a change, or see a change in this pyramid. The availability of biomass for consumption also plays a factor. Leaf biomass is more available and useful than wood. So I want you to use the pyramid to practice and complete the following problems. What percent of the biomass of primary consumers was transferred to the secondary level? So how much biomass was moved from here to here? And then what percentage of the biomass of producers, so down here, was transferred to the top level? So you're basically going to take these numbers, subtract, convert to a percent. So for this first one, we have 675 and 150. So we do 150 divided by 675 and times that by 100%. And that gives us 22%. So 22% of the primary consumer energy went to or primary consumer biomass went to the secondary consumer level. For our producers, we had 2,000 and we went up to 75. So if we do 75 divided by 2,000, we get 3.75%, or 3.75% of the biomass of the producers went to the tertiary consumers, which is humans. Now, pyramid of numbers shows how many individual organisms are present at each level. This is good at showing the vast number of producers versus a few top-level consumers. Organisms vary in rates of growth, reproduction, and biomass. Organisms with faster growth and reproduction often have less biomass. The bigger the size of the species, the fewer organisms are needed at the top to support the next level. Now, I want you to draw the lines around each pyramid model to identify the basic shape of this pyramid. So if we draw lines around it, this is a triangle pyramid because there's a lot at the bottom and very little at the top. And then here, there are very few trees because one tree gives a lot of food, right? So we have a lot of insects, a lot of other insects, and then very few birds. Because energy and matter get concentrated at higher trophic levels, toxins and harmful chemicals can actually build up in those organisms. This is called biomagnification. Many organisms have died, gone extinct, or are unable to reproduce because of this. Examples of toxins that have been biomagnified are DDT, fertilizer, lead, mercury, and hexachlorobenzene. Now, this picture shows an algae bloom. This happens when a large amount of nutrients from fertilizer runs off into a body of water. Algae grows in dense, visible patches near the surface, and it looks like green scum. Now, in 2015, an algae bloom occurred off the coast of Alaska and California in the North Pacific. And the bloom was dominated by a type of algae that produces a neurotoxin called domoic acid. Neurotoxins are like poisons that affect the brain. Many large marine animals died during this algae bloom, including sea lions, whales, and birds. Some evidence suggests that their deaths were related to this domoic poisoning. So how could domoic acid have poisoned these organisms? Well, using the graphs, we're going to figure out a claim, evidence, and reasoning. So if we look here, we can see that we have this chlorophyll concentration here. If we're at blue, we have very little chlorophyll. When we're at 30, we have a lot. Okay, so if we're looking at this dark green section, that's probably a lot of chlorophyll. The white is kind of like 0.05, and then the blue is like none. Okay, if we're looking at the 2002 versus 2015 graphs, use the graphs to make a claim, comparing how many marine animals the algae killed in 2002 versus 2015. I want you to use numbers to support your answer, evidence from the picture and this legend right here, and then what scientific reasoning would connect your evidence to your claim. So, for example, here, the algae probably would have killed more marine animals in 2015 than in 2002, because in 2015, we have more dark green areas, which had 30 mg per meters cubed. So that's basically like it had a certain concentration that was much higher in 2015 than 2002. One second. The algae contains dominoic acid, which is a neurotoxin. Remember that thing that hurts the brain? That would kill those marine animals. In 2015, because we had a higher concentration of algae, the more animals would have eaten it, and it would have killed more animals in 2015 than in 2000.